Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and this past weekend there was another first combat event for the Gundam card game. This is the event where there are pods of 64 players trying to get into that top 16, and for this one there are 3 pods, which I was able to get the top 8 for each of them. So if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the Gundam card game, and I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want any of the deck lists for this event and many others, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description, and let's just jump on into it. So this was held on August 24th by PEC Lusitania. This was also the exact same time that I was running my half case event here for us on like our webcam server. So and it's really interesting to see that a lot of this was pretty similar between the two of them as well, based on what the archetypes that were doing well and were able to win the events as well. So there were 3 pods of 64 players, and then for this page we were able to get the top 8 for each one of them. So there were 24 decks that we have for this one, and of that top 24 we had 12 copies of the green and white Wing Zero, 7 copies of the blue-red Cyber-Newtype, 2 copies of blue-white Unicorn, 2 copies of blue-white Freedom Blockers, and 1 copy of this blue and white kind of Earth Federation. It's a deck I haven't really seen before, and I'm kind of excited to go for it. But generally speaking, I think this has kind of shown what I believe is kind of like the best 3 color combinations in the game right now, with green, white, red, and blue, as well as the blue and white. I also have been kind of doing some more like searching in like the Asia meta, see if there's anything different going on in like Japan and stuff. And generally speaking, I think the biggest difference based on like the results that I've been able to see for our events in the English version and events in Japan is that blue-green aggro is just so dominant over there. And it's really interesting to see that not really, do as well here, right? Even for the event that I ran this week too, we did have, blue and green being kind of like the fourth most popular color combination with 24 players out of 120, but only 1 was able to get into the top 16, which I found was interesting. And then for this one, none of the players were able to get a top 8 finish with that color combination. I don't know what people are running for these events, but I do know based off of 64 players that first place is undefeated, 2nd through 7th place is usually X1, and then 8th place is just kind of the highest seed that was able to bubble in for it. So no one playing blue-green was able to get a 5-1 record or better for this event, which I think is really interesting. Again, because it's doing so well in Japan otherwise. So that's kind of like a weird difference I've been noticing between the two of them. I kind of also like dropped my own like mini tier list for what this event looks like, and this is based off my own event, but it also I think mirrors the results for this event particularly too, where green white, red blue, and blue white are the kind of 3 best color combinations once again. There's also just kind of like some discussion of what's like a unicorn deck and a freedom blocker deck. I think blue and white in general, there's just like a lot of different ways to kind of build it, and there's like it's really hard to kind of clearly say what archetype some of these decks belong to, but I think generally blue and white is a playable color that a lot of people are playing for it. So it's going to be interesting to see if that changes at all, if Japan ends up being more like us, if we end up seeing more green blue for us in like the English and like North American meta. And I think there's going to be a lot of things that change, especially once we get our big regionals in the next couple months. We do have the Bandai Card Fest one, and then a couple in October, but that's also a month away. So anyways, I do want to just kind of go over a couple of these deck lists in particular, the winning deck list for each one of the pods, and some other kind of builds that kind of caught my eye. If you guys want access to any of those, you can find them on my website though, Eggman Events, link in the description, and let's jump on into it. So for first place on the first pod, we've got Owl with their build of the Wing Zero. And honestly, we've been seeing a lot of builds of Wing Zero in the last little bit, and I think there's been a lot of changes that people have been either playing like what I'd say like the standard build, right? This is based more with having like some Kira pilots with some blockers like the Ale Strike as well as the Freedom Gundam. In this build in particular, we're also not playing like Zawart, which I thought was interesting. We're playing a couple copies of Strike Gundam. We're also like not playing any of the Searcher for the wing stuff for the Operation Meteor. So we're not running any of that, right? So I think this is something that's interesting and more unique for this build specifically. I do really like the addition of Striker Pack. If I'm playing any kind of copy of the Wing Zero, I do feel like you kind of need to play 2 or 3 copies of this card. The fact that it's also just like a blocker, a lot of times it's like a backup copy of the Gundam Ilfert, I think is really great. The fact that it can pop a blocker out without you having to like lose a shield. So sometimes it can be like one of the best defensive bursts in the game right now. And when this deck is really just wanting to get to level 8 as soon as possible, that can really help you get there. So I know a lot of people are mostly just kind of running more of like the Death Scythe and Wing package with a little bit of blockers on top of it. This build in particular is running 4 copies of Kira specifically. For this, we're also playing 2 copies of Freedom Gundam and then 4 copies of the Ailstrike and the Strike. We're not playing Zawart, which I'm not a big fan of that card right now, especially like in this build. It makes kind of sense to have it as like a blocker early game, but the fact that it's a blocker that gets KO'd by your own wing zeros is a little bit tough. And sometimes I have a hard time like finding the best way to get value from Zawart too. So I think having some more proactive cards like these ones, I think like the Strike Gundam also just helps you get that cycle when you need it. And I think most people are just off playing first contact for their the additional ramp. I think that the ramp from bird mode and also just having blockers to just be to 8 resources healthier is just kind of the way for it. So this is Al's build, again, won the first pod, and then we also want to go over Yamato's build. This one's a little bit different. This also is like the breach centered build of it, which I see get some success every once in a while, right? The biggest difference is that we are playing like the Shang Wu Fei, this being able to help you with your breach effects. This works obviously with the Shenlongs, either the level 4 one that just is like a 4/3 with breach 3, or the level 5 one with the Shenlong Gundam, being able to get the breach 4. And this being able to just pop Gundam Ilfrits is really, really strong. It doesn't even have to have a link or pair for it. Just whenever this attacks, you get rid of a blocker that's level 3 or lower, which some of the best blockers in the game do fall under that category. So a free removal on top of something that also has breach is really, really nice. The fact that these cards are also searchable from the path to victory or defeat is really good too, and I think that helps out the deck as well. We're also seeing 2 copies of Striker Pack. I think that's, again, really important. I think I'd run 2 copies of it. We are also playing Zawart in this build. I'm still kind of iffy about this card, as mentioned. I'm really, like, this would be like the only deck that I would play it in. I think a lot of blue-white decks can survive without it, and sometimes it helps you get to the late game, but I think it's a card that if you need to find room for other cards, Zawart is something that you can maybe consider taking out as well. So this is Yamato's build, and congratulations to our 12 green and white wing players who were able to get a top 8 finish from this event. All right, next up we've got the kind of Unicorn Tempo, and this is a newer kind of deck idea for me. This also did well in my own event as well, so I think this is something that a lot of people have been kind of working on over the last couple weeks, and kind of premiered, I would say, this past weekend. So for it, like the ways that we kind of identify it is that we are playing, I'd say, like close to 4 and 4 copies of both Unicorn modes. In this build specifically, we're playing 4 copies of the level 5 and then 3 copies of the Destroy mode. We are also playing 4 copies of the Boninger Lynx. So we're also not playing Zawart, right? We're playing either like a Demi Garrison or like a Jim, whatever level 2 one that you want to play for it, just to do some additional trading early. And also Strike Dagger. I think Strike Dagger also is just sometimes like a better Zawart, right? You don't get like the immediate block for it, but the fact that you can also use this and pressure other cards, or get rid of an EX base, is really good for something like Strike Dagger. We're playing like the Rizel and the Gundam. I do think that the Amuro Ray and Gundam package is good, but not necessary for this deck. It's a little bit clunky to have only 4 things that Amuro actually like links with. You do you can put Amuro in like Ailstrike as well, or also like Unicorn Gundam, but I think this is like a decision. It's not necessarily a hallmark for kind of like these more tempo builds, but it's something that you can choose. And then we do have like the white base and Overflowing Affection. So no Show Resolve in this build, and no copies of Corsica base. I do know that card's been getting more popular lately. I've been seeing people who play just only 4 base of the Corsica versus white base. I think for something like this deck, it's more of a decision of what you think you're going to be able to get the most usage for. But this is a build that was able to win the second pod from Raelarkh, and then we also have Centipede, who's able to win the third pod with this build too. So this one is only running like more of like the Kira and like the Ailstrike stuff. We're not playing any Amuro, and we're not playing any copies of the Gundam. We are playing also the Sword Strike Gundam, which I think this card is great, especially since I think there are more and more decks that are playing tokens. If you are playing against a deck that is playing Corsica base, the fact that you get rid of their token for just attacking with this being a link is really great. It links with any Earth Alliance trait, so not only the Kira Yamato, but also the Hawk of Endymion, which also helps you with them, one, getting rid of some tokens as well, but also being able to use this to get some like a +1 in some scenarios. So it is a level 2, so you can't get the when paired effect with Ailstrike, but you do get some additional effects there. And then we do play like the 4 copies of the Unicorn, 3 copies of the Destroy mode, and then 1 swag copy of the Freedom Gundam, which I think that makes sense, right? We were playing the Kira. You see, alternatively, we're playing the 4 copies of Corsica base, right? It's really up to you, whatever one I think you think gets more value. I don't think one is strictly better in a deck like this one. And then we are playing like the Overflowing Affection, a couple copies of Showa Resolve, and 2 copies of the Unforeseen Incident. So this is definitely a deck that I've been trying to play a little bit more myself. I've been really intrigued by kind of this build, right? A lot of people are playing more of like the freedom blockers. Actually, that's going to be the next one. We'll talk about that there. So anyways, this is the Unicorn kind of tempo decks that are able to do well. Congratulations to Raelarkh and Centipede for their finishes there. All right, next up, going to kind of more like the freedom blockers. This is still blue and white. If you think that these are all just one archetype, that's fine. I don't blame you, because it is, it's starting to get kind of nitpicky, because this one is playing, 3 copies of Destroy mode and 1 of like the 5-drop Unicorn. We're playing 3 Bonagers, but I would say this is more of kind of like a freedom blockers. This also can just be like blue, white, good stuff. We're also playing like 3 copies of Amuro and 2 copies of the OG Gundam. So generally, like, right, it's just kind of like the pace of play that you really want to do. So I would say like the kind of tempo decks are more like aggressively leaning. You don't have as much blockers and more defensive stuff, but you are kind of putting out these threats and interacting with your board, your opponent's board more proactively. And this deck just kind of tries to outgrind your opponent for value. That's why we're also playing stuff like Showa Resolve. Archangel's also kind of like a hallmark card to me, that this is more of a blockers focused build compared to like a tempo focused build as well. And then we also have like more blockers since we're playing the Perfect Strike Gundam. So this is a Medwok's version of the deck. We only had 2 copies of 5 copies of blue-white decks. 2 of them I thought were more of like the Unicorn tempo deck. 2 of them were more of like the blockers build, and then we had 1 additional build which we'll look at the end as well. But I think these are just all good cards, right? You can never go wrong with a deck that just is only running good cards. I think generally speaking for blue-white, a lot of the power for these decks too is that you have just great during pair effects, or you just have great generic pilots that you don't really care the unit that much of what it's in. You just care about the effects you get from it. And Bonager just getting a generic +2/+2 really helps for some late game trades. So here's the build here from Medwok, and then we also do have one more. So this is Darkkammui's build of it. And again, like, we are playing 2 copies of Unicorn Destroy mode and the 2 of the Unicorn mode, but I still think that this is, again, more of like a blockers build. We're not playing like Zawart, we are playing like the Demi Garrison, but we are playing the Archangel. We do have some additional blockers. We're playing the Sword Strike and the Gundam, right? Like, you can just really see, like, there's just such a good card pool for blue and white that you really can pick what you think is going to be good, play the cards to answer it, and you have a lot of ways to get into those positions that are helpful. So I think the only other thing I'd say is that you can start, I've always, whenever I see people play these many commands, I'm like, when do we put in like the Gundam aerial, right, to be able to like recycle our commands, right? We're playing 2 copies of the Striker pack for this one, the Showa Resolve and the Unforeseen Incident. It's probably a little bit too clunky in this current format, but there's still just like, you look at these 50, right? And I don't think there's ever going to be like a 50 for 50 card for blue and white, since there's just so many like minor changes, ratio changes, like tech cards you can run, that it's going to be hard to get that straight 50. But this is Darkkammui's build. Congratulations for their finish with this freedom blockers. All right, next up we've got Cyber-Newtype, and this is, I'd say, the second most popular deck, at least by finishing for this build, and also an archetype that I really like in this meta as well. We're going to go looking at the top placing list for each one of these pods real quick. So we have Asmodai's version of the deck, which is pretty standard, I think, but with the small add of the Sayla Mass. This is just a really good pilot that does have Earth Federation, White Base Team, and New Type traits. So it has every trait that Amuro has as well, which is really nice. Biggest difference is that it's a level 3 compared to a level 4. You don't get as many things that you get to link with, right? You do get the link with the G-Fighter and the gun cannon, but you don't get the link with the Gundam. So a little bit worse in that sense, but the fact that it is just like a generic +1/+1, the fact that it's a new type works really, really well with Kshatriya, because that does do 2 damage elsewhere. You don't get really any other effects, but that is fine in some scenarios. We do have like the Anksha, we do have like our early game. We are missing out on like a couple of the 2-1 early drops. We're only playing the gym for it, but I think that is fine. We're playing the Corsica base, 3 Visalis, 2 copies of Battle of Aces, and then 3 copies of Show of Resolve. So I think this is standard. Like I like playing like 5 bases and then 5 events max. So like 10 cards of our deck should be about that for these builds. We're supposed to be like really low to the ground and aggressive. And if we're playing more than 8 pilots, if we're playing 2 additionals with the Sailor Masses, I would maybe start considering taking out like a Battle of Aces or 2. That card could be either the best card in our deck or the worst card in our deck, because it is really great in certain scenarios, and then the scenarios, if they don't pop up, then you're just kind of like in a weird spot. So, but here's the build here from Asmodai, and yeah, I've been really enjoying testing Sailor, and I think it's definitely a card that can work well in a deck like this one. And the next up we've got this is, I'd say, a little bit more of like a standard build on like a lot of the units that we're playing, but it does have like a lot of creative choices as well. So the units I think are all pretty self-explanatory, right, for what we're running. Nothing too crazy. I do like having like a swag copy of this card. Just the fact that it can offer like a card draw and just have another link with Amuro, I think is fine. I do wish it was like an Earth Federation link, but it's fine that it isn't. And then we also do have like some more kind of creative uses for our bases. So we're playing the Mining Asteroid, just 1 copy of this, and then we have 3 copies of the Rilula, this being able to get that extra damage and kind of like ping on anything, right? Just anything that 5 or less AP. Just gets you that additional damage and can pop out of your life too, which is really nice. 1 copy of Close Combat and then 2 copies of Battle of Aces. So definitely more focusing on like the hard ping access of this deck. We're playing 4 copies of Show of Resolve too. I don't know if I would play this 50 for 50. I do feel like there could be a chance that it's a little bit too cloggy with how many commands that we're running. Since we're playing 7 commands and then 4 bases, so really like 11 within those 2 categories, so maybe 1 more than the 10 that I was talking about. But for whatever reason, I feel like this could be like a little bit more clunkier at times, but I do think that these are all good cards that are worth considering, and obviously they did very well with the build too. So not much more to say, but this is the build here from Cloud Dreamer. And then to finish off for the red and blue new type, this is Champagne number 6 and their version of the blue and red. So I would say this is a mildly standard build as well, but I do like the little tech choice of the Bukyu here. So being able to use this as like a support too, it does mean that you can bump up your GMs or your Zaku Mariners to a 4 AP, which means that not only do you get to trade with an EX base or get rid of an EX base, but then you would also be able to potentially trade with a Gundam Ilfrit. So I think this is a cool little tech for the deck, especially since we are playing 8 level 2 ones. That means that we can have a lot of ways. We also have like the BQ is also the Visalis as well, being able to use these to really kind of guarantee that we can pop out some 3 AP damage against the EX base. I think is really, really strong for the deck. So especially since we are playing 4 gun tanks and 4 Ankshas as well. So even if like we do the damage and then they just try to like, instead of block it, they just attack on the crackback, we have ways to like ping down the blockers that survive the attack that they shouldn't have anyways. So other than that, I do really like this Gundam. I don't know if I could ever run the vanilla more copies than the OG, just because there's so many situations where I'm like, man, being able to just rest their Ilfrit, attack 6 into like a desert base and then go wide, I feel like that kind of combo is really, really strong. And so I felt like most of the time if I see Amuro and Gundam on curve, I win a lot of scenarios. But I also know that like this card having cost 2, that just there are some weird scenarios where I'm like, man, I don't really have anything else to fit in the slot, and so being able to have a 2 cost here instead of a 3 cost does help me kind of fill out a curve at times as well. So I think this is a really cool build. I definitely want to try out the BQ tech for it as well, and here's the build here from Champagne. So wrapping it up, we do have one more build. So this is Kilian's version of an Earth Federation aggro with a splash of Oz. I don't know how to say. I've never seen this 50 cards before in my life. Like, this is a really unique build, and it's cool that I was able to get a top 8 finish in an event this size as well. So I'm going to try my best. There's probably some interactions that I don't know specifically, but again, this is a deck that I just haven't really seen before. So we do have a lot of like the usual suspects, right? We've got Jim and Demi Garrison, Gun Cannon, as well as Rizel and the Gundams and the Amuro, and also the Kira. We're playing Kira in this deck, but we don't have any units that link with it, which I think is really, really interesting as well. It's just to pair it and get good trades, which I think is fine, but it is interesting that's the choice we've decided to make with it. We don't really have any card draw. Even though we're playing blue and white, we have access to Show of Resolve and Overflowing Affection. We don't have either of those in this deck, which I think is peculiar, because generally, like even like an overflowing in a deck like this, just to help us find our pilots, I would be really hard pressed to not run that card. But we do have a lot of incidental drawing from one, the Noin's Ares. So if we have another Oz unit in play, we get to draw one. So that is pretty good. It is a level 3, which is a little bit tough, but that does help you get that draw. We also have the Zex Leo. So when paired, you get to, and this is paired with anything, you get to rest something with 3 or less HP. So you also get to use that with, it does link with Zex, which does have this during your turn. When this unit destroys an enemy unit with battle damage, you get a draw 1. So this is clearly really good with the Tall Geese. You get to make it a 6/5. Also, Tall Geese being able to restand itself, either making it so you can attack again, or conversely just not have it being able to attack into, does help you, I think, in the late game. So I think that's a cool little add for this deck too. But then also, if you need that card draw from Zex, that can be helpful for you. But it's a really interesting build. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. We're also running no bases, right? We're only playing Striker Pack at 4 copies, so we do have some chances to draw or play from our shields, but we don't have any like real burst outside of pilots and that. So we have 16 cards, right? We're probably going to get like a pilot to our hand throughout a game if they hit our shields, but really, really interesting. I'd have to really try out this deck to have a better opinion on it. So here's the build here. If you got, I know there's fans who want to play some Oz stuff. I know it's a kind of a fan favorite kind of like faction. So here's a build. You guys can try it out and let me know how it is. But that's going to be it for this one. Again, thank you to the PEC Lusitania for running this event, and it looks really cool to be able to like see all this data around the world. I think this is a game that has like a really fast meta. It's going to be difficult to see, I think, like a 50 for 50 for any of these archetypes. The deck building is really, open, and it's been really fun to play and try to keep up with it as well. So again, if you guys need any of these deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next time.